putting water on my hand. You are wickedness, lady. This is not good. Stop it.
The luxury sedan pulled into the circular driveway earlier than expected. Marcus Chen stepped out, briefcase in hand, ready to surprise his family with an early return from his business trip. But nothing could prepare him for what he was about to witness. Through the courtyard archway, he saw two figures huddled on the ground, one elderly, one small, both drenched and trembling. His mother, Rosa, shielding his daughter, Lily, as dirty water dripped from their hair and clothes. And standing over them, holding an empty bucket, was his wife, Victoria. The world seemed to stop. The sun burned overhead. And in that single moment, Marcus realized his entire life had been built on a foundation he never truly examined. This is a story about cruelty hidden behind closed doors, about the wounds we inflict when we feel powerless, and about the moment one man had to choose between the family he was born into and the woman he married. Stay until the end, because the truth about what happens next will leave you breathless. To understand this story, watch the full video and share it to 10,000 people and tell which party of country you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Your comments and shares help these important messages reach more people. There were moments Lily wished she could bottle and keep forever. When she was 4 years old, her mother would spin her around their garden, her tiny feet barely touching the ground as her dress swirled like a flower opening to the sun. The afternoon light would paint everything gold, the hedges, the fountain, even her mother's smiling face. On summer evenings, the smell of her mother's cooking would drift through their San Francisco home. At night, her mother held her close, singing soft lullabies about love, about safety, about a home where a child would always belong. Back then, Lily believed the world was kind. She believed that if she fell, loving arms would catch her. She believed bedtime always smelled like her mother's perfume. But everything changed when she turned 7. On a gray, misty morning, Lily stood clutching her grandmother Rosa's hand as her mother's casket was lowered into the ground. She didn't fully understand death, only that her mother would never sing again, never cook her favorite meals, never laugh at her silly jokes. Her mother took half of Lily's heart into the earth that day. A year later, her father remarried. Victoria walked through their door with a smile that looked beautiful but felt cold. From that first moment, Lily sensed something wrong, a chill that seeped into every room, every meal, every quiet conversation. Victoria wasn't like her mother. She was stunning, always perfectly dressed, walking like someone who expected the world to step aside. But beneath the polished surface, she looked at Lily the way someone looks at an obstacle in their path. And Rosa, gentle and patient, the keeper of their home, she only needed to place a dish in the wrong cabinet for Victoria to glare at her like she'd committed a crime. Victoria didn't need to say it out loud. Her eyes said everything. This house doesn't want you. It started with subtle comments. Children shouldn't sit on leather furniture. Don't bring cooking smells into the main rooms. Don't turn on the TV when I'm relaxing. Then came the invisible walls closing in around Lily. She couldn't call her father when he traveled. She couldn't sit at the table when Victoria had guests. She wasn't allowed to mention her real mother's name. The more Lily missed her mother, the smaller her world became. Rosa saw everything with old eyes that still saw clearly. She watched Lily smile less, watched her quietly wipe tears in the corner of the kitchen. She saw wounds that left no bruises but cut deeper than any physical harm. She tried to protect Lily with everything she had, with meals, with lullabies, with warm arms that tried to fill a mother's absence. But some days, she would look at Victoria and know a storm was coming. Victoria carried the scars of someone who had known poverty, humiliation, and deep insecurity. She had fierce ambition, a desperate need to control, and a terror of being replaced or dismissed. And in her eyes, Rosa and Lily, the two most vulnerable souls in the mansion, were thorns she wanted to remove. Victoria never said it aloud, but the truth was clear. These two made her feel smaller than anyone who had ever hurt her before. Rosa, with her wrinkles and modest ways, was like a mirror reflecting the childhood Victoria had tried to bury and forget. Victoria had grown up in the rough neighborhoods of Oakland, where people fought over groceries, where her mother cleaned houses until her hands bled. Victoria hated poverty, hated the way people looked at her and judged her worth in a single glance. Now, in this beautiful house with tall windows and marble floors, Rosa's presence made her feel like she'd never truly escaped where she came from. And Lily, that child carried a face that was achingly familiar. Those deep brown eyes weren't hers. They belonged to the woman who came before her, the first wife Marcus had loved completely. Even buried 6 feet under, that woman still lived in every corner of this home. All Lily had to do was sit quietly, whispering memories about her mother, and Victoria's chest would tighten with an invisible wire of jealousy. Not because she hated children, but because Lily was a constant reminder. She was not the child's mother. She was not Marcus's first love. She was the second choice. The replacement. The bitterness started with small things. When Rosa placed a silver spoon in the wrong drawer, Victoria scoffed. "Don't touch the expensive items. Your hands are used to cheaper things." When Lily accidentally spilled a glass of water, Victoria said coldly, "Children from simple backgrounds are always clumsy." Each sentence was a needle. Each day brought another small cut. And those cuts slowly made Victoria feel stronger, taller, more in control of the house she wanted to claim as completely hers. Whenever Marcus traveled for work, which was often, given his position as a venture capital executive, the atmosphere in the house shifted dramatically. Rosa became quieter. Lily became watchful. And Victoria became free. During those days, the darkness inside her grew. Not through shouting or obvious cruelty, but through small rules and whispered controls. "You don't need to keep cash, Rosa. It's dangerous. I'll manage the household money. Lily shouldn't go outside so much. Children like her need to stay home and focus on their studies. Don't call your father. He has important work. He's not your personal babysitter." Each sentence was a hand pushing the grandmother and child into a smaller corner. Each action was another loop tightening around them. Victoria didn't hit. She didn't slap. She never yelled loudly. She suffocated them with gentle, quiet rules, the most dangerous kind of cruelty. Cruelty born from old wounds. Cruelty born from fear of losing power. On long nights when the house slept, Victoria stood in the dark of the master bedroom, staring down at the empty courtyard. Under the warm yellow lights, the old woman and the skinny child rose in her memory like two shadows refusing to disappear. One shadow reminded her she had once been poor. The other reminded her she was second choice. And in that silence, Victoria made a decision, never spoken, but deeply rooted. Those two shadows had to leave this house, one way or another. With Rosa, she wanted her sent away. She belongs in a retirement community, Victoria often thought. Somewhere far from here, far from Marcus, where she can't interfere anymore. With Lily, she wanted her shipped off to boarding school. A boarding school child can't hug her father every night, can't sit with her grandmother, can't stand in the way of a marriage. And the mansion? Victoria wanted it clean, truly clean, free of old woman prayers, free of small hurried footsteps, free of every memory of the first wife. She wanted control over the wealth, the lifestyle, the reputation, and Marcus's heart. She wanted the spotlight to fall only on her, not dimmed by the presence of these two. That quiet hatred, rooted like a poisonous vine, grew inside her every day. No one saw it. No one heard it. No one knew how strong it had become. Not until that fateful afternoon when the San Francisco sun scorched the courtyard, and that hatred finally crawled out into the light. It happened through an act so cruel that Lily would remember it for the rest of her life. That morning began with unusual silence. Marcus hurried down the stairs with his suitcase, crisp white shirt pressed flat, the faint scent of expensive cologne trailing behind him. Lily stood at the bottom step, clutching her worn teddy bear, watching every move her father made. Rosa, slightly bent at the waist, rested her hand on the wooden railing, offering advice while hiding worry deep in her eyes. "I'll only be gone for 2 days, Marcus said. He leaned down and kissed his mother's forehead, then bent again to kiss Lily's hair. "Be good. Listen to Grandma. And listen to Victoria. He paused at that last name, as if he himself could hear something sharp in it, but he didn't allow the thought to linger. Worker waited. His phone buzzed. The car was already outside. The front door closed behind him. The sound of the car engine faded. For a few seconds, the entire house felt like it had fallen into a vacuum. Then Victoria's heels clicked across the marble floor, slicing through the quiet. She stood in the center of the foyer, still wearing the same fitted dress she'd worn to see her husband off. But the expression on her face was no longer the one from a few minutes earlier. The gentle smile was gone, replaced by cold sharpness. "Lily," she said softly, the edge in her voice barely hidden. "Come here." Lily walked slowly toward Victoria, eyes lowered, heart beginning to race. "Yes," she whispered. Victoria twirled a credit card between her fingers, the metallic edge catching sunlight from the window. "You used your father's card to buy books online last week, didn't you?" Lily stiffened. I only bought school books." "No one asked whether you were studying," Victoria cut in sharply. "From now on, I'll keep this card. And if Rosa needs to buy anything, she'll come to me first." "Understood." Lily pressed her lips together, nodding slightly. From the kitchen doorway, Rosa watched with tired eyes that seemed to gather one more wrinkle with every passing moment. "There's no need for Rosa to hold cash either," Victoria continued, her tone casual as if commenting on the weather. "She's getting older. What if she drops it? And these days, elderly people get taken advantage of so easily." Each word fell like a pebble into Rosa's heart. But she stayed silent. She was used to swallowing the words she wanted to say. By noon, the San Francisco sun hammered down on the courtyard. The air outside shimmered with heat. The sky was blindingly bright. Lily usually stayed inside the cool rooms at this hour, but today Victoria called her downstairs. "You're going to help clean the courtyard," Victoria said, pulling on yellow rubber gloves. The harsh smell of cleaning chemicals filled the air. "But Grandma said the sun is too hot," Lily whispered. "In this house, I make the decisions," Victoria replied, eyes hard. "Not her. Bring the bucket and mop outside." Lily bit her lip but obeyed. In the kitchen, Victoria gestured to the housekeeper. "Pour the floor cleaner, dish soap, and that leftover greasy water into this bucket. Don't change it." The housekeeper hesitated for a second but then did as told, assuming it was needed for the drains. The mixture released a thick, harsh smell that swallowed the air around it. Victoria looked at the bucket for a moment, the corner of her mouth lifting slightly. Fitting, she thought. Lily knelt beside the flower bed, wiping stains on the tiles. Sweat streamed down her back, her shirt clinging to her skin. Every time her small hand touched the burning ground, she flinched. From the doorway, Rosa couldn't watch any longer. "Victoria," she said softly, trying to keep her voice gentle. "Let the child rest. This heat." "Don't interfere," Victoria replied without turning. "You worked in the sun back in your day, didn't you? Why should she be any different?" "But she's weaker. She's not used to." "Because you baby her," Victoria snapped, spinning around. "You and your constant, grandma this, grandma that. She never sees me as someone who matters in this house." Rosa fell silent. It was one of the rare times Victoria came close to speaking her real feelings. She felt like an outsider. But instead of seeking healing for that wound, she used it as justification to inflict more wounds. Lily looked up, her face flushed, hair soaked with sweat. "Can I rest for a moment, ma'am?" she asked, using the title Victoria forced her to say, a title that fit like shoes 2 sizes too tight. "My feet hurt. They're burning." "Stand up straight," Victoria ordered without a second of hesitation. "If you don't respect me, you'll learn under the sun." I didn't disrespect," Lily tried to explain, tears beginning to form. Talking back, Victoria stepped forward, her shadow falling over the child. "Kneel there under the sun and learn how to behave properly." Rosa moved closer, gripping a wooden chair for support. Victoria, you're going too far. Too far. Victoria laughed bitterly. Too far is when you two act like you own this house. Talking to people behind my back, complaining about me. Today, I'm only reminding everyone of their place. For a moment, the two women's eyes met. One carried deep, festering anger. The other carried the exhaustion of someone who had lived long enough to see how these battles end. He wouldn't agree to this, Rosa whispered. If Marcus knew, my son would be heartbroken. Victoria heard the words my son like someone pressing on an old bruise. He isn't only your son, Victoria hissed. He's my husband. The statement wasn't just about ownership. It was a fortress she desperately clung to. She turned sharply and walked toward the bucket filled with dirty water. Lily watched each of her steps, a familiar feeling rising in her chest, the same helplessness she felt the day her mother's casket was lowered into the ground. The hot air rising from the courtyard curled upward like the breath of a wild beast. Lily knelt in the middle of the yard, her tiny shoulders trembling, her breathing sharp and choked. Victoria stood a few steps away, holding the heavy bucket filled with murky liquid. She tilted her head slightly, observing the grandmother and child the same way someone might study two small animals that had misbehaved. There was no explosive anger in her eyes, only a deliberate coldness, as if she had imagined this moment for a very long time. Despite the blood trickling from her scraped knees, Rosa struggled to stand and shield her granddaughter. "Lily, come here," she whispered, her voice shaking but still steady. Lily scrambled to her grandmother's side, wrapping her tiny arms around the woman's leg as if clinging to the last thread of safety she had left. Victoria scoffed softly, as if the sight only irritated her further. "Of course," she said with a sneer. "Hide behind the old woman, just like always." Rosa lifted her head, her tired eyes still bright with dignity. "Victoria, you don't have to do this. We've never harmed you." "Harm?" Victoria laughed hollowly. "Every time I look at the two of you, I'm reminded of exactly where I stand in this house. And I'm tired of it. Tired." The old woman's voice was small but firm. "You don't need to dump that bucket to feel like you matter." For a brief second, something flickered in Victoria's eyes, a flash of emotion. Maybe hurt. Maybe rage. Maybe an old memory someone had accidentally brushed against. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She lifted the bucket higher. "Just a little lesson," Victoria said slowly, "to remind you both where you belong." Rosa spread her arms wide, shielding Lily like she was protecting the last piece of her own soul. "Victoria, stop," she cried, but her breath was weaker than the sun pounding down on the courtyard. Without the slightest hesitation, Victoria tipped the bucket. Splash. The sound crashed down like a breaking wave, sharp, heavy, merciless. The filthy water slammed into the grandmother and child like a shower of humiliation. The cold, grimy mixture poured over their heads, shoulders, backs, then splashed onto the tiles, forming dark stains that soaked deep into the ground. The stench hit instantly: old grease, harsh detergent, spoiled kitchen water, all of it mixing into a choking cloud that made Lily cough violently, her eyes burning. "Grandma, I can't breathe," Lily sobbed, trying to wipe her face with hands already coated in suds and grease. Rosa squeezed her eyes shut, her shoulders trembling. The dirty water seeped into her clothes, into the creases of her aging skin. There was something in her expression, a pain not caused by the cold or the smell, but by a humiliation so deep it cut straight to her heart. She bowed her head, as if trying to take all the shame onto herself so her granddaughter wouldn't have to. Lily clung tighter, her tiny wet hands gripping Rosa's soaked clothes like they were her lifeline. The world around them shrank to the sound of their ragged breathing, soft sobs, and the steady drip of filthy water hitting the tiles. Victoria watched them for a moment. No regret. No hesitation. No flicker of empathy. Only a chilling satisfaction. She dropped the bucket. The hollow thud echoed across the courtyard. She smoothed a strand of hair behind her ear and turned away, as if she had just completed a routine household chore, not degraded two human beings. "Next time," Victoria said, not even bothering to look back. Remember who has the power in this house. Lily collapsed onto the tiles, her tears mixing with the dirty water, making her cheeks sting from the harsh chemicals. She tried to inhale, but the smell made her cough harder. Rosa pulled her close, stroking her hair with trembling hands full of a love that refused to break. Lily, breathe. Breathe, my child. It's okay. It's okay. Her voice was hoarse, cracked, like her heart was breaking with every word. In that moment Lily whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Grandma, why does she hate us so much?" Rosa didn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because how could she explain to a child that some people carry a darkness so deep, they hurt others just to feel like they exist. She simply held Lily tighter, as if letting go would allow the world to swallow them whole. The drive from the airport felt shorter than usual that day. Marcus sat in the back seat of his car, eyes drifting toward the window where the San Francisco afternoon heat shimmered in waves. His 2-day business trip had just been cut short. A meeting cancelled unexpectedly, a partner's emergency, and suddenly a 2-day trip became half a day. Maybe I should just go home and rest, he thought. Have lunch with Mom, ask Lily about her math test from last week. The idea softened his expression. He could almost see Lily running to him with her workbook, eyes sparkling. "Daddy, I got an A." And he could see his mother, Rosa, resting her hand on his shoulder, not saying much, but her eyes always full of quiet pride. "They'll be happy you came back early," his driver said, as if reading his thoughts. "Mrs. Victoria will probably be surprised too." "Yeah," Marcus replied, tired but gentle. "Don't call ahead. Just drive straight home." He wanted to see his house as it truly was. Unprepared, unpolished, unmasked. The car turned onto the road leading to their estate. The trees on both sides rustled under the hot breeze. The security gate scanned the license plate, gave its familiar beep, and slowly slid open. Marcus slipped his phone into his pocket. He had no idea that in just a few more steps, everything he believed about the home he'd built was about to be torn apart. Outside, Lily was still trembling violently in her grandmother's arms. Dirty water streamed down her hair, her clothes, onto the tiled ground. The smell clung to their skin, to every breath they took. Rosa tried wiping her granddaughter's face with her sleeve, but the moment her fingers touched Lily's cheek, the girl cried out in pain. "Just bear with it a little," the old woman whispered. "Let me wipe your eyes so they won't burn anymore." Lily nodded faintly, but the innocence in her eyes was gone. In its place lingered fear and something dangerously close to losing trust. Victoria stood beneath the awning, arms crossed over her chest, leaning against the glass door. She looked at the two of them the way one looks at a stain on the floor, slightly annoyed, but not enough to bother touching it again. She was already planning. Later, she'd make the housekeeper clean the courtyard. She'd force Lily to help scrub it again as punishment for being clumsy. And tonight, if Marcus video called, she'd make Lily sit far from the camera with the excuse that the girl was tired. Everything in her mind was neatly arranged. Everything except one thing. The black car was rolling into the courtyard earlier than expected. From inside the vehicle, Marcus glanced through the window, planning to text the kitchen about lunch. Then his eyes froze. In the middle of the courtyard were two collapsed figures. One old, one small. Their clothes were drenched, stained dark, hair matted to their skin, clinging to each other like people who had just been swept ashore after a flood. His chest tightened before he could fully understand what he was seeing. "Stop the car," he said, his voice dropping low. The driver braked hard. The car came to a halt in the center of the courtyard. Marcus opened the door. The burning heat of the tiles rushed up at him the moment his foot touched the ground. In that moment, time stretched out into slow, trembling strands. Marcus looked at his mother first. She was soaked, her hair plastered against her forehead, dirty water running down the wrinkles on her face as if trying to wash away the dignity she had guarded her entire life. Her frail arms were still shielding Lily, as if lowering them even for a second would cause the whole world to collapse onto her granddaughter. Then he turned to his child. Lily sat pressed against her grandmother's leg, her tiny hands gripping the soaked fabric. Her tears mixed with the filthy water streaming down her cheeks, leaving pale trails amid the dark stains. Her shirt clung to her skin. Her lips trembled. Her eyes, both relieved and terrified, looked at her father as if he were the only lifeline in a violent storm. Then Marcus looked at Victoria. She stood stiffly under the veranda, the sunlight reflecting off the glass behind her, stretching her shadow long across the tiles. Her face had paled in shock, but her chin remained lifted, a habit from a lifetime of refusing to appear weak. Marcus inhaled, his chest tightening painfully. He didn't scream. He didn't throw anything. He didn't lash out. His anger was never the kind that burst and vanished. It was the kind that burned low and steady, hotter with every second. Marcus stepped forward. Each step struck the tiles like a hammer. Each step tightened an invisible rope around Victoria's chest. "Victoria," he said, his voice dropping into something cold and sharp like steel. "What did you do?" Victoria felt her throat dry instantly. The explanations she had rehearsed from the moment she heard the car enter, every word she had prepared, suddenly vanished. I just... She swallowed hard. "I just taught them some respect." Taught. One word, sharp enough to crack the air. Marcus's eyes were like blades. Not the eyes of a husband arguing with his wife, but the eyes of a man who just found an intruder inside his home harming the people he loves. "With this?" he asked, voice low but unmistakably clear. "By dumping filthy water on my mother and my daughter?" Beside him, Lily whimpered softly. Rosa placed a shaking hand on her shoulder, forcing herself to stay silent. She knew this was the moment the two of them needed to face each other directly. Victoria dug her nails into her palms until crescents of pain formed. "You don't understand," she tried to steady her voice. "Since the day I came into this house, they've never treated me like family. It's always them, mother and granddaughter together, always looking at me like I don't belong. I just wanted." "You wanted to prove you're stronger," he cut in, "by humiliating them in the middle of the courtyard. That's not fair." Victoria's voice rose, cracking. "You only see today. Were you home when they talked about me? When they acted behind my back? Do you know how much I've tolerated? I'm human too. I hurt too. You hurt." This time the word hit harder. A vein pulsed at his temple. He turned toward his mother and daughter. "This is the hurt you're talking about? A 70-year-old woman kneeling under the sun, drenched in dirty water? A child crying and apologizing because she's terrified of you? That's your pain." His words slammed into Victoria like physical blows. For a split second, she wanted to scream. "Have you ever cared about my pain? Living with 3 people who share stories I'm not part of? Watching you hold your daughter but never once turning to ask if I'm okay?" But pride crushed the confession in her throat. All she managed was, "You always defend them. So what did you marry me for?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Silence fell over the courtyard. The birds stopped chirping. The distant street noise vanished behind the high walls. All that remained was the soft drip of dirty water falling from Lily's shirt onto the tiles. Marcus stared at Victoria for a long moment. "I married you," he said slowly, "because I believed you would stand beside me. That you'd be a second mother to Lily. That you'd respect my mother. That you'd be a partner in this family." He paused. The words "I believed" dropped like stones. "But what I saw today..." He exhaled, pain flashing through his eyes. "What I saw today is a woman standing under the veranda, watching her mother-in-law and stepdaughter being humiliated, as if it was her victory." Victoria opened her mouth, but no sound came. It felt as if someone were pressing a hand against her throat. "You don't understand," she forced out, her voice no longer sharp. "You don't see how they treat me. You don't know how much I've had to swallow. I just wanted, just once, for them to know I have power too." "Power," he repeated, bitter, almost laughing but not really. Power in this house doesn't come from stepping on others, Victoria. It doesn't come from a bucket of dirty water. He pointed toward the grandmother and child. That is my mother. That is my daughter. And you. His voice tightened. You are the woman I gave a chance to after losing my wife. A gust of wind swept through the courtyard, lifting the hem of Victoria's dress, carrying the acrid smell of dirty water back toward her. She looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Inside her mind, a faint voice whispered, cry, apologize, show remorse. But pride, old wounds, childhood humiliations, and all the lonely nights in this mansion mixed together, pulling her mouth into the wrong shape. If you really loved me, Victoria whispered hoarsely, you wouldn't have left me alone with them all this time. The sentence struck deep into a place inside Marcus he rarely examined. He knew he wasn't a perfect husband. He knew he hid behind work to avoid tension at home. But did any of that justify the scene before him? Marcus turned to Lily. The child was still trembling, pressed against her grandmother's side. Lily, he said gently. Yes. Her voice was barely a breeze. Tell Daddy, how many times has this happened? Lily froze. Her eyes flicked toward her grandmother. Rosa placed her hand on the girl's back and nodded slowly. It's okay, she murmured. Tell the truth. Lily bit her lip. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Not the first time, she whispered. But today was the worst. A heavy silence settled over the courtyard. Marcus's anger transformed into something deeper, the sickening weight of failing as a father, a son, and a husband. He looked back at Victoria. This time, his eyes held more than anger. They held regret, exhaustion, and the unmistakable beginnings of letting go. I understand now, he said quietly. Too well. There was nothing left to argue. Nothing left to justify. The air in the courtyard grew so thick it felt like the house itself was holding its breath. Everyone could feel it. Something in this family had just broken. Not with a loud crack, but with a soft, devastating fracture that would change everything. Marcus slowly straightened. Dirty water still clung to his hands from when he'd reached down to comfort Lily. He looked at his palm, the same hand that once held his daughter when she was learning to walk, now stained with grime and grease. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his gaze had changed. No more pain. No more shock. No more searching for explanations. Only the bare, sharp truth. He turned toward Victoria. Victoria, he said, his voice not rising, not shaking, not wavering. It was calm. Terrifyingly calm. The calm of a man who has finally reached the edge. You're leaving this house. Victoria froze. What? What did you say? You're leaving this house, he repeated. Today. It hit her like a punch to the chest. You can't do that, she cried, the sound cracking. I'm your wife. I'm the woman you chose. You can't just throw me out because of them. No. Just one word, but sharp enough to slice the air in half. The moment you laid a hand on my mother and my child. He stepped forward, his eyes sharper than any physical wound. You stopped being anything at all. Victoria stumbled back, searching his face for something. Anything. Regret. Softness. A trace of the man who once held her. But all she found was a door closing forever. You forget everything, she choked out. You forget the nights you needed me? When you said I saved you after your wife died. When you held me and said I brought light back into your life. You forgot all that. No, he replied, and somehow that hurt her more. I remember everything. But I'll never forget seeing my mother kneeling in filthy water. Or my daughter crying and apologizing because she was scared of you. His words struck harder than any physical blow. Victoria rushed toward him, gripping his arm desperately. I've had enough. You don't know how lonely I've been in this house. You don't know. He pulled his arm away, gentle but final. You chose to handle your loneliness by hurting others. No one in this home is responsible for the pain you brought from your past. A moment later, he turned his head toward the gate. David. The security guard ran in. Sir. Take Mrs. Victoria to pack her things. Cancel her access cards. Arrange a car to take her to a hotel. Victoria went still. You're insane. My mother and my daughter nearly lost their dignity under your hands, Marcus said quietly. Each word tightened like wire. If I'm insane, I've been insane since the moment I saw that. The guard stepped toward her. Ma'am, please. She yanked her arm away. I'm not done, she screamed, her voice shattering across the courtyard. This house will never be at peace without me. Lily trembled in Rosa's arms. The old woman pulled her closer, shielding her from one last poisoned arrow. Victoria looked around, at Marcus, at his mother, at the child she never accepted. Then she laughed, a broken sound mixed with pain and hatred. You think they'll love you forever? You think their love is real? One day you'll learn, you're only wanted when people need you. But Marcus didn't respond. He simply turned away, lifted Lily into his arms. The girl buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing. The house was so quiet you could hear the wall clock ticking. The living room, wide, white, cooled by air conditioning, felt like the opposite world from the scorching courtyard outside. But on the sofa, Lily was still curled up as if the sun was still burning her small shoulders. She trembled with each breath, each sob stifled but impossible to contain. Rosa sat close beside her, pulling the girl into her embrace. She was still shaking, not from cold, but from shock and humiliation that hadn't yet faded. The stench of dirty water had been washed away, but traces lingered in the air like a ghost refusing to leave their skin. Marcus stood by the doorway for a long time, one hand pressed against his forehead. He needed a few minutes to breathe, to gather everything that had just happened and place it into a corner of his heart he could bear to look at. Then he walked toward them. He didn't sit down. He knelt, kneeling in front of his mother, the aging woman he had always assumed would be fine, would be strong, would weather anything while he unintentionally left her to face the storm alone. Mom, his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I left you for too long. Rosa looked at her son. There was no anger in her eyes, only a deep sadness and a kind of quiet relief, as if a burden she had carried for years had finally been lifted. Marcus, she said softly, calling him the way she did when he was a young boy running around their old neighborhood. She lifted her wrinkled hand and placed it against his cheek. Her palm was old, but her touch was still warm. You didn't leave me. You just didn't see everything. Today you've seen it. Her gentle hand was enough to break down the walls he had built to look strong. He closed his eyes, and something hot fell onto the back of his hand resting on his knee. A man's tears, the ones he never allowed to fall in meetings, in the office, in front of colleagues, fell now in front of his mother and his child. I should have protected you both, he said, each word scraped raw from his throat. Instead, I let you live in my house with someone I didn't truly understand. I let it get to this point. Rosa shook her head gently, interrupting. Don't let, should have, destroy the things you still have. God gives us eyes to see, but not everyone chooses to open them. Today you opened yours. That's enough. Lily listened in silence. She twisted her fingers nervously, then suddenly leaned forward and wrapped her arms around her father's neck. Daddy. He turned and pulled her close, holding her tightly. Daddy, please don't leave me again. The words were soft, but inside Marcus's mind, they echoed like a bell. Not because he had ever abandoned her. He called, he sent money, he brought gifts after every trip. But he understood. For a child who lost a mother and lived with a cruel stepmother, every time he left felt like being left behind all over again. He tightened his embrace. Daddy's here, he whispered, voice rough but steadying. Daddy's home. And from now on, I won't let anyone hurt you again. Not even myself. Not if I ever make you face things alone again. Lily broke into tears, this time not from fear, but from release. Rosa watched father and daughter holding each other, her own eyes shimmering. She leaned back into the sofa, feeling exhaustion wash over her. Yet it was the kind of tiredness that comes after surviving a storm, knowing you still have a home to return to. Marcus, she said, voice quiet but firm. If you truly want to protect your family, start by staying close. Money can't shield a child from the rain. The ones who shield them are their parents' arms. He nodded, slow, determined, like sealing a vow. I'll rearrange everything, he said. I'll cut down my business trips, work from home more, hire help that answers only to you, and give Lily a room where she feels truly safe, not a place where she fears being punished. Lily lifted her head, eyes still red but now carrying a faint glimmer of hope. Daddy, can I put Mommy's picture in my room? She asked shyly. Before, she wouldn't let me. Even unfinished, the sentence made the air heavier. Marcus met his daughter's eyes. You never need anyone's permission to remember your mother, he said firmly. This house has room for everyone. For Grandma, for you, for your mother's memory, and for every beautiful moment you want to keep. This is our home, not someone else's stage. Rosa smiled, a small smile, warm and deep like a hearth rekindled after a long violent storm. Outside, the sun was lowering. The dark streaks of dirty water on the tiles had dried, fading slowly, swallowed by the last amber light of the day. A housekeeper stepped outside and began splashing buckets of clean water onto the courtyard. No one told her to, but everyone understood. The courtyard needed washing. Not just the tiles, but the memory of a horrific day the family would never want to relive, yet should never forget, so it would never happen again. 3 weeks passed since that terrible afternoon. The courtyard tiles gleamed clean under the California sun, but the memory of what happened there remained etched in everyone's hearts, a scar that would take time to heal. Marcus had kept his promise. He cancelled 2 major business trips and restructured his work schedule to be home every evening by 6. His office knew that unless it was an absolute emergency, he was unavailable after 5:30. The change was difficult at first. Colleagues raised eyebrows. Some questioned his commitment. But Marcus had learned something profound that day in the courtyard. No amount of professional success could replace being present for the people who needed him most. Lily was slowly returning to herself. The first week after Victoria left, she barely spoke. She would sit by the window with her teddy bear, staring out at the courtyard as if waiting for something terrible to happen again. But gradually, with her father home each night and her grandmother's constant gentle presence, the light began returning to her eyes. Marcus had kept another promise too. Together, they transformed Lily's room. They painted one wall a soft lavender, her mother's favorite color. On her desk, in a beautiful silver frame, sat a photograph of her mother holding baby Lily, both of them laughing in the sunlight. Is it okay, Daddy? Lily had asked nervously when they first placed the photo there. Is it okay to have Mommy here? Marcus had knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Sweetheart, it's more than okay. Your mother will always be part of this family. Always. That night, Lily slept peacefully for the first time in months. Rosa had her own journey of recovery. The physical wounds, the scraped knees, the bruised dignity, those healed relatively quickly. But the emotional wounds ran deeper. One evening, as she prepared dinner with Marcus helping beside her, she finally spoke about what she'd been holding inside. I kept thinking it was my fault, she said quietly, stirring a pot of soup. That maybe if I had been warmer to her, if I had tried harder to make her feel welcome. Marcus stopped chopping vegetables and turned to face his mother. Mom, none of this was your fault. Victoria made her own choices. You and Lily were nothing but kind. But she was so lonely, Rosa continued, her voice trembling slightly. I could see it in her eyes sometimes. That terrible loneliness. And I didn't know how to reach her. Marcus set down the knife and took his mother's hands in his. You can't save someone who's drowning if they're pulling you under with them. What Victoria needed wasn't something we could give her. She needed to heal wounds from long before she came into this house. Rosa nodded slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. I just pray she finds peace someday. It was such a Rosa thing to say, after everything, still hoping for her tormentor's healing. Marcus hugged his mother tightly, marveling at her capacity for grace. The changes in the household were practical too. Marcus hired Mrs. Chen, a warm-hearted woman in her 50s who had worked with families for decades. Unlike Victoria's controlling approach, Mrs. Chen worked with Rosa, respecting her as the matriarch of the home. This is Rosa's kitchen, Marcus had told Mrs. Chen on her first day. You're here to help, not to take over. She makes the decisions. Mrs. Chen had smiled and shaken Rosa's hand warmly. I'm honored to work with you. The difference was immediate. Rosa moved through the house with renewed confidence. Her shoulders no longer hunched in anticipation of criticism. Her smile returned, genuine and frequent. Lily bonded with Mrs. Chen quickly. The kind woman would help with homework, bake cookies on weekends, and most importantly, never made Lily feel like she was in the way or unwanted in her own home. One Saturday morning, Marcus found Lily in the garden, planting flowers in the spot where the terrible incident had occurred. What are you doing, sweetheart? He asked gently. Lily looked up, dirt on her hands, a small smile on her face. Grandma said that sometimes, when bad things happen in a place, you can plant something beautiful there, so the bad memory doesn't win. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. That's very wise. These are forget-me-nots, Lily continued, pointing to the delicate blue flowers. Mommy loved them. Grandma told me. Together, father and daughter knelt in the warm soil, planting beauty where cruelty had once stood. It felt symbolic, a family choosing growth over bitterness, hope over despair. That evening, as the three of them sat down for dinner together, something that happened every single night now, Marcus looked around the table and felt something he hadn't felt in years, complete peace. His mother was smiling, sharing a story about her own childhood. His daughter was giggling, actually giggling, at something silly Mrs. Chan had said earlier. This was what family was supposed to feel like. 6 months later, the Chen household had transformed completely. Not in its physical appearance, the mansion still stood beautiful and pristine, but in its spirit. Marcus had learned to read the subtle signs he'd missed before. When Lily grew quiet, he no longer assumed she was fine. When his mother's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, he asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He had learned that being a provider wasn't enough. Being present was what mattered. One evening, Lily brought home a school assignment that stopped Marcus in his tracks. The prompt was simple: write about a hero in your life. She had written about him. But it wasn't about his business success or the beautiful house he'd provided. She wrote, "My hero is my daddy because he came home when we needed him most. He didn't just say he loved us. He showed it by changing his whole life to protect us. Real heroes don't wear capes. They show up." Marcus read it 3 times, tears streaming down his face. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, he sat with his mother on the back patio, watching the stars emerge over San Francisco. "I keep thinking about Victoria," he admitted, "wondering if I could have handled things differently." Rosa was quiet for a moment. "You did what you had to do to protect your child. But Marcus, I hope you also learned something about yourself." He looked at her, curious. "You can't build a family by working all the time and hoping everything at home stays together on its own," she said gently. "Marriage, step-parenting, blending families, these things need attention, communication, and presence. Victoria made terrible choices, but we all played a part in letting things get so broken." Marcus nodded slowly. "You're right. I hid behind work because dealing with the tension at home was uncomfortable. I told myself everyone was fine because it was easier than facing the truth." "The important thing," Rosa said, patting his hand, "is that you see it now. And you're doing better. That's all any of us can do, see our mistakes and grow from them." A few weeks later, Marcus received an unexpected email. It was from Victoria. His first instinct was to delete it, but something made him open it instead. The message was short. Marcus, I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking to come back. I'm writing because my therapist suggested I need to take accountability. What I did to Rosa and Lily was cruel and inexcusable. I was so consumed by my own pain and insecurity that I became the very thing I hated, someone who hurts the vulnerable to feel powerful. I'm working on myself now, trying to understand why I carried so much anger. I hope they're doing well. I hope you all find peace. V. Marcus read it several times. There was no manipulation in the words, no attempt to justify what she'd done. Just raw, honest accountability. He showed it to his mother. What do you think I should do? He asked. Rosa read it carefully, then folded her hands in her lap. I think you should acknowledge that she wrote it, wish her well in her healing, and then close that chapter completely. Forgiveness doesn't mean reopening doors. It means releasing the weight of hatred so you can move forward. Marcus wrote back a single paragraph, thanking her for the apology, wishing her success in her healing journey, and making clear that there would be no further contact. Then he closed his laptop and returned to his family. The final scene of this story takes place on a Sunday afternoon. The Chen household was hosting a small barbecue. Mrs. Chen was at the grill, Rosa was setting out dishes, and Lily was playing in the garden with children from the neighborhood, something Victoria would never have allowed. Marcus stood on the patio, watching it all, and realized something profound. True wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or square footage. True wealth was measured in moments like these, in laughter that filled the air, in a mother who felt safe in her own home, in a child who trusted that she was loved and protected. Lily ran up to him, breathless and happy. Daddy, watch this. She did a cartwheel on the grass, not perfect but full of joy. Beautiful, he called out, clapping. She ran back to her friends, and Rosa appeared beside him. You've built something good here, she said quietly. Marcus put his arm around his mother's shoulders. We've built something good. Together. As the sun set over San Francisco, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the Chen family gathered around the table. They held hands, said grace, and shared a meal. No tension. No fear. No cruelty hiding in the corners. Just a family that had survived a storm and chosen to rebuild with love, presence, and unwavering protection for the most vulnerable among them. This was what home was supposed to feel like. And finally, it did. Thank you so much for staying with us through this powerful journey. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more meaningful family stories that inspire and teach important life lessons. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Drop a comment below telling us what you learned from Marcus, Rosa, and Lily's story. We read every single comment. Remember, true family isn't about wealth or appearances. It's about love, protection, and showing up for those who need you most. The way you treat the vulnerable reveals who you truly are. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you for being part of our community. Stay blessed, stay kind, and we'll see you in the next video. Bell subscribe, thumbs up like, speech balloon comment, outbox tray share.